we literally live in a world now in 2020 where digital is the whole thing. So when people talk about digital marketing, they're really just talking about marketing.
Welcome to Velocitize Talks. I'm Andy North. I'm joined today by Ben Ostrower, founder and creative director of WideEye. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and about WideEye and what the value proposition is they bring to the market.
So WideEye is really at this unusual intersection between design, technology, and work for social causes and progressive causes, meaning we work for a lot of campaigns, we work for a lot of nonprofits, all of whom have a social good mission. We also work with corporate social responsibility, as well as some brand new organizations that have a weird blending of all of those different components. And the reason why we see ourselves as unique in the space is that the background of our team, myself included, is a mix of experience in advertising and digital media and digital marketing, but also in advocacy and in nonprofit management and nonprofit organization and in fundraising. And so there are only a few companies that I think kind of do what we do and really specialize in what we do, in that we're not just a fundraising company. We're not a fundraising company at all, actually, for nonprofits and organizations. We really are a creative services company first that just so happens to work with organizations for whom advocacy and fundraising and coalition building and mission and social good-based work is the bread and butter of what they do. So when we work with a campaign, they could be on an electoral schedule in terms of how they spend money and in terms of what sort of goals that they want to achieve. We work with organizations all the time that are fighting for reproductive rights, fighting for new climate change legislation, criminal justice reform. We love working in a space where we're working with clients who are in the front lines of trying to transform society for the better and to achieve a more just society.
That's exciting. You mentioned digital marketing, and you've obviously been doing this a while, and clearly your agency kind of covers the spectrum of digital marketing. How have you seen digital marketing evolve? And two-part question, where do you see it going in the next 3 to 5 years?
So it depends how you define digital marketing. I think that a lot of folks use labels to define these things that are actually incredibly fragmented. And you know what I think we do well, what we enable our clients to do is we work with them as a creative partner to help them communicate better, both on the web, increasingly more and more on social, and being that sort of creative partner that can roadmap a process and a way of speaking to audiences that's really effective. That's what we do. But there are also firms that are doing exclusively online advertising. Mm-hmm. They're doing just online display ads. They're doing just Facebook ads. And they're making most of their money on the percentage of the ad buy. And then the creative that they're doing just is thrown in because that's how they are able to make their money.
Right.
So the notion of digital marketing as a monolithic thing is a little bit challenging to grasp because it really is increasingly more and more a multifaceted, fragmented thing that has all sorts of subsets and specialties. That said, where it's going, I think the name of the game really is this fragmentation that we're seeing and we have been seeing for quite some time, which is that the world is no longer communicating in an analog way, and then like digital is growing. We literally live in a world now in 2020 where digital is the whole thing. So when people talk about digital marketing, they're really just talking about marketing, right? Mm-hmm. When they're talking about digital advertising, they're really just talking about advertising. When they're talking about digital communications, they're just talking about communications. And so what's really happened is that the notion of digital has gobbled up all of these different disciplines that used to be these kind of different departments within a company or organization. So the communications team doing press releases within an organization or a company, they have to be able to speak digital now. They can't just write a press release and put it out to a few sources and you're on your way. That's no longer as effective as being able to message on social, message on your website, message over email. So the notion of digital marketing is so fragmented now because it's inclusive of everything.
Let's drill down into the website that you mentioned, which is obviously just one part of your digital marketing palette. How do you take a company or perhaps a value-driven organization and distill all of that down into a compelling website for your clients?
So increasingly more and more, and I know it's probably counter to what we should be saying as an agency because we've done so well building really sophisticated and beautiful websites over the years. But I actually think in a lot of ways the website itself as a digital asset is shrinking in importance significantly. It used to be that launching a website was the entire digital program and digital branded presence for a campaign or organization or company. And now it's just one slice of the pie. And I think year over year that slice is shrinking. What you're doing on Instagram, depending on who you are, can sometimes be far more important than what you're actually putting on your website. It takes a lot of deep empathy and understanding of the client and understanding what their goals are, what they want to achieve out of the process. And I think one of the things that it took us a long time as an agency to really figure out, but I think is the key to being able to set off on a good foot on any sort of creative process, is that you have to understand the psychology and the standpoint of the decision makers. You can't just create a website or a brand in a vacuum, right? You can't just be like hired to create something, go away and create it, and boom, you're done. It's an interchange with a client, right? And so really understanding the point of view of the stakeholders, as we call them, the executive director of an organization, the board, the communications director, what is a win for them, right? It's really doing some sitting down with them and understanding from them what a win looks like.
So you have an excellent background. I really was excited to read about you, and you've been an award-winning PBS producer of documentaries, and you're also a photographer.
Yeah. Actually, I should pause you right there. I've worked on award-winning documentaries.
Fair enough.
My name was not on the Emmy.
But you know good storytelling. Is that still possible in an era of 8-second ads? Can you still do good storytelling with some of your campaigns when you have to make it so tight?
I do think that the simple building blocks of narrative and storytelling are applicable to almost any creative undertaking. The notion of there being a protagonist and an antagonist and a clear arc for where you want to take someone. I think that's, whether it's a single Instagram post or a website or a 30-second video ad, there needs to be a point of view.
Fascinating. You obviously wear a lot of hats as an agency founder and as the creative director, and gosh knows, I'm sure there's several others. Several other functions you do.
I'm a psychologist too.
That too. Possible part-time bartender at times. Are there any creative or design trends that you're excited about right now, or that you see on the horizon that your team is excited about?
Anytime we have the opportunity to create visual content that can exist across a series of mediums in a really effective way and draw those eyeballs. I realize it's a vague answer, but I think that anytime we're able to create a set of images that really gets people's attention, that's exciting for us. And the notion of how to, and that's the core of visual branding, and I think it always will be, And so I think the things that we're also just from a technology standpoint really interested in investing in even more is, and it sounds cliche because it's been around for so long, but video, motion graphics, anytime you can make something move and through moving really be distinctive and eye-catching, that's interesting for us.
Yeah. You talked about some of the clients that you have. Have you seen a rise in purpose-driven marketing? Is it okay for brands to now put their purposes, put their values out there, or should they still stay on the sidelines?
I mean, I think honestly the answer is yes. I think that when I started Wide Eye 10 years ago or so, I was doing this sort of political and progressive and social good work early on because that's what I felt passionate about, and that's what helped me sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially with the way that our political reality in this country has evolved over the last 10 years, and how it's evolved globally, and a lot of the pressures that we see with globalization accelerating, and the rise of kind of more authoritarian governments globally. I think the kind of fusion is that consumers and supporters and members, however you refer to your audience, they are looking to have a relationship with brands, right? They want to feel like they're part of a crew, they're part of a club, and that in deciding to purchase a thing or buy a thing or engage with an organization or donate or something, they feel like they have a personal investment and stake in that organization or company's mission. And so between what's been happening in the world, particularly the last 10 years, and the increased sort of demand of audiences to have that kind of relationship, I actually think brands that declare their values and declare their purpose are being really savvy and really smart with regards to how to strengthen that relationship. You can't just be a Sears anymore, where you're just this gigantic warehouse that sells stuff.
Right.
You actually do have to connect emotionally with the people who frequent your brand or your company or organization. So it's a complicated dance, but I think it's increasingly more and more relevant to the way that brands speak to the world and speak to their audiences, is that you have to sort of declare your position on certain things.
Right. That's fascinating. One of the questions we like to ask all our guests is there a book, a blog, or a podcast that you're listening to or watching that you'd like to share with our viewers?
I can't read, actually. No, I'm kidding. That's a good question. I think I'll be perfectly honest, and I don't mind saying this more publicly. I spend way too much time on Twitter. Way too much time. Because I think what it's actually doing, just, following often really smart and thoughtful people on Twitter, is that it's actually pulling my attention away from more long-form, interesting things, like a book. And that said, I actually follow politics way too closely. I think it's partially living in Washington, D.C. I think it's also just sort of growing up in a political family and being a junkie. But like a lot of the podcasts I listen to are politics focused.
Was there one you'd like to share?
Well, I mean, I love Love It or Leave It. I'm a huge John Lovett fan, which is a embarrassing thing to admit, but I think it's, I have a ritual every Saturday morning. I walk the dog and listen to Love It or Leave It, and that's a kind of a good like balance between my interest in politics, but also my like having to deal with incredible stress around it too. So like a politics comedy podcast is kind of a perfect mix for me.
Yeah. My guest today has been Ben Ostrower, founder and creative director of Wide Eye. Ben, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.